Moving to Norway. I'm moving to Norway. Those were the first words I heard that morning. It came through a voicemail, left at a time she knew I'd be fast asleep. She called my home phone, not my cell, because she knew I kept it downstairs, on the kitchen counter, always ready to ignore. She knew me too well. Still in a haze, I trudged down the stairs, stretching out the remnants of a dream. I grabbed the cereal box, and just as I was about to pour it into a bowl, my gaze landed on the phone. The screen flashed, one unread message. I was confused. No one ever called my home phone except my parents, who liked to check in on their youngest baby, as they still called me. Grabbing the phone, I pressed the voicemail button and leaned against the counter, cereal forgotten. I'm moving to Norway. I froze mid-bite, the metal spoon slipping out of my hand and clinking against the bowl. The voice was unmistakably Anya's, calm but distant. I got the research fellowship, she continued, her voice steady. It's an incredible opportunity to work at the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo. This is something I've dreamed about for years. I've been thinking about us too. A pause stretched through the static. Things have been rocky between us, Kai. We've barely spoken in the last few months, and I can't pretend like nothing's changed. She sighed deeply, her voice growing quieter. Maybe this distance is what we need. I hope you understand. Then, with a softness that broke me, goodbye. The line went silent. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the phone, feeling the weight of her words settle in. My hands moved on their own as I dumped the cereal into the sink, no longer hungry. The name she used, Kai, still echoed in my head. Only Anya had ever shortened my name like that. To everyone else, I was Kaya. But that version of me only existed with her. Suddenly, I needed to move, to do something, anything. I ran upstairs, pulling on jeans and an old hoodie, grabbed my keys, and headed out the door, not sure where I was going but knowing I needed to act. Memories of Anya flooded my mind as I sped through the quiet streets. We had met in university, her a cultural anthropology major, me a geology student. She was so different from anyone I'd ever met. Anya was this brilliant, analytical person with messy blonde hair that she always kept tied up in a loose bun. Her smile was rare but worth the wait, always making you feel like you were the only one in the world when she looked at you. I remembered the first time we met, at a lecture on Norse mythology. I had been intrigued by the topic, even though it had nothing to do with my field. I'd ended up sitting next to her, barely able to focus on the lecture because I was too busy stealing glances at her, wondering how someone could be so captivating. After class, we'd both ended up at the same campus cafe, the Nook. I remember stumbling over my words when I ordered coffee right after her. She had smiled at me, eyes lighting up in amusement. That was a good lecture, she had said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I nodded, too stunned by her presence to form a proper response. Yeah, really, fascinating. We sat at separate tables at first, but she had noticed me struggling with a research paper and wandered over. You seem like you could use some help, she had said, pulling up a chair next to me. That's how it started, Anya helping me understand the cultural context of the geological formations I was studying. She made connections between things I'd never considered before. It wasn't long before we started spending all our time together. I remembered the way she would scribble notes in the margins of my textbooks, explaining complex theories with ease. Her passion for history and mythology was infectious, and I found myself falling for her brilliance just as much as for her warmth. But things changed after graduation. Anya got accepted into a prestigious research program, and her life started pulling her in a different direction. I supported her, but I felt her slipping away. We started arguing more, about work, about time, about everything and nothing. Now, as I pulled into the parking lot of her apartment building, I couldn't help but remember the worst fight we'd had. It had been about her obsession with Norway, about how she was so focused on her career that I felt like I was being left behind. She had accused me of being unsupportive, and I had shot back that she cared more about ancient relics than about us. I rang her doorbell, my heart pounding as I waited. When the door opened, it wasn't Anya but her roommate, Liv. "She's gone, Kai," Liv said gently. "She left for the airport an hour ago." I stood there, stunned, my chest tightening. Liv sighed, seeing the desperation in my eyes. She didn't want to say goodbye in person. She thought it would be easier that way. Easier? For who? Without another word, I turned and ran back to my car, my mind spinning. I had to get to her before it was too late. I sped towards the airport, the words from our last fight echoing in my mind. "I love you, Anya, but I don't know how to make this work anymore." I hadn't said those words out loud then, but I wished I had. When I finally reached the terminal, I searched frantically, hoping against hope that she hadn't left yet. Then I saw her, standing in line for security, her backpack slung over her shoulder, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Anya!" I called out, my voice breaking. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. For a moment, we just stood there, the noise of the airport fading into the background. "I'm sorry," I said, walking up to her. "I should have fought harder for us." Anya looked at me, her expression softening. "Kai, I don't know if that would have changed anything. But you can't leave like this," I pleaded. "We can figure it out." She smiled sadly. "I need this, Kai. I need to do this for myself. But this isn't goodbye. I'm coming back. Maybe then, we can find our way back to each other." I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. We hugged, holding on to each other for what felt like both an eternity and a second. As she pulled away, she whispered, half agony, half hope. I smiled through my tears. "Yeah, half agony, half hope." And with that, Anya turned and walked towards the gate, leaving me standing there, full of both pain and promise.